Hey everybody, Kristen here. As you know, I believe homemade is best, but it doesn't need to be complicated. And today I'm going to share with you the easiest way to make homemade bread. If you've been intimidated by sourdough starters or kneading bread, this is the recipe for you. There's no kneading, there's no starter. We're just going to mix everything together, let it sit at room temperature, and then bake for perfectly crispy, soft and chewy bread. You guys are going to love this recipe. So let's get started. The first thing we're gonna do is measure out our flour. Now I'm using whole wheat flour today, but I'm gonna walk you through how to use any flour you like. And the easiest way to measure your flour is to place a mixing bowl on a kitchen scale. This costs about $10 on Amazon and so worth it for making bread. Gives you the most accurate weight, as we'll talk about here in a minute. You're gonna place your bowl on your scale and then you're gonna zero it out. And we're looking for 500 grams of flour. This is 500 grams of flour regardless of the type of flour you're using. So that's why this recipe is so great, because it's so versatile. Today I'm using 100% whole wheat flour. It's gonna be a lot denser and heartier. You could use a mix of all-purpose flour mixed with whole wheat flour for lighter bread. You could use 100% whole wheat flour like I'm doing today. You could use a whole white wheat flour, which is lighter in texture but still 100% whole grain, or you can even use pastry flour or bread flour. You just want to make sure that you have 500 grams of whatever type of flour you're using. For whole wheat flour, that's about 3 3/4 cup of flour, and for all-purpose, that's about 4 cups. All right, we're at 480, 499, 500 grams. Again, 500 grams of flour, regardless of the type of flour you're using. To this, we're adding in 2 teaspoons of kosher salt and 1 teaspoon of yeast. Another reason this recipe is great, you don't have to worry about the yeast and salt touching each other and messing up your dough. Just whisk that to evenly combine the salt and yeast in the flour. And 2 teaspoons of kosher salt does sound like a lot of flour. You need it in this recipe, but make sure you're using kosher salt, not table or iodized salt or sea salt, because that will make your bread too salty. All right, to this, we're adding in 2 cups of warm water. You want your water to be between 100 and 115 degrees, and that will help to activate the yeast and form those nice pockets of air throughout the dough, which will keep your bread super light and fluffy. Any hotter will kill the yeast. Any colder won't activate the yeast. So if you find that the first time you make this dough that your bread isn't really light and airy, it could be your yeast, and your yeast may have not been good. You want to make sure you check your expiration date, or you may have used too hot water, which would have killed the yeast, or too cold water, which wouldn't activate the yeast. I like to use a kitchen thermometer just to test it, just to make sure, but by now I've made this recipe so many times, I can just put my finger in the water and know exactly where it's at. It's like lukewarm water. Shouldn't be too hot to the touch. All right. This is a very rustic, shaggy dough. It should just come together. You don't want to overwork it. You don't need to knead this dough at all. The magic comes from it sitting out at room temperature. We want to cover this and we want to let it set for at least 8 hours or up to 18 hours. No longer than 18 hours or your bread will be overproofed. But I typically tend to make this dough in the evening and then bake it off in the morning, which is exactly what I'm doing here today. So I'm just gonna cover this. I'm gonna let this sit at room temperature overnight, and I'm gonna meet you back here and show you just how easy it is to bake this bread and how perfect it turns out. My bread dough has rested now. It's nice and foamy and yeasty, and it's time to bake it. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pop a Dutch oven. You can use anywhere from a 3.5 quart to a 6 quart Dutch oven. And you want it to be round, not oval, into the oven. And we're gonna turn our oven to 450 degrees. We want our Dutch oven to preheat while the oven preheats so that we add our dough to a really scorching hot pan that's gonna form that crispy crust. While our pan is preheating, let's shape our dough. So this is a really wet, shaggy dough. That's exactly what you want here. It's going to just kind of look like a big blob. It's perfect. And then what we're gonna do is you wanna lightly, not overly, but lightly flour a surface to shape your dough into a circle. I'm using parchment paper here because then I can just lift this parchment paper up with the dough on it and drop it in my Dutch oven. Makes it super easy. If you're using parchment paper, you need to make sure that it's safe to up to 450 degrees. White parchment paper is typically only safe up to 400, 425. So pay attention to that. But mine is safe up to 500 degrees here. So I'm just gonna lightly flour this surface here. And then we're gonna turn our dough out on to the surface. You see here how I'm kind of moving some of the flour to the side because I really don't want a big clump of flour on my bread. I just want to have it to the side, just lightly floured there. And then if I need to use extra flour here to shape the dough, I have it, then I can get rid of any excess. Okay, so we're just gonna turn this dough out here. Ooh, it smells so good. That yeasty dough, I just love that smell. All right, it's a little bit sticky again, but most of it came out there easily. Then again, you just wanna lightly flour your hands here and then just shape it into a circle. You don't wanna overwork this dough. The less you work with it, the better it's gonna be. Really, it makes it so easy. Okay, so just kind of fold it into itself there. But that looks pretty perfect. If you wanted, you could score the top with a knife or one of those little fancy bread scores. Totally not necessary though. And again, we just want to kind of brush off the flour there. I'll clean my counters here after I drop this parchment paper into the baking dish. But that way we won't have that excess flour, as I stated. And then we're just gonna let this rest while our oven preheats. It'll take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how quickly your oven preheats. And then we're gonna bake this bread, and I can't wait for you guys to see the results. Okay, my pan is preheated here. It's super, super hot, so be careful. And then all we're gonna do is we're gonna lift up our parchment paper or our dough ball. If you weren't using parchment paper, safe to up to 450. Pop it in your pan. Put the lid on. We're gonna bake this for 30 minutes covered, then we're gonna remove the lid and bake for an additional 20 minutes. Okay, our bread has baked here. It smells incredible. There's just nothing like the smell of fresh bread. So what we want to do now is just use the sides of your parchment paper. If it's still a little hot, use your pot holders there. Actually, I will just to be safe. And you just want to lift it out of your Dutch oven there and place it on a cooling rack here. As you can see here, it's got that nice crinkly top. It's perfectly golden. We're gonna let the bread cool and then we're gonna slice it up and I'm gonna show you just how perfect it turned out. Okay, our bread has cooled. It took everything in me not to be picking off the top here before I showed you this loaf of bread. I love my carbs and bread ranks high up on my favorite type of carb. All right, just look at this. There are pockets in this bread. This is 100% whole wheat bread that has the reputation of being super dense, but this bread is not that. It's not heavy, it's not dense. And remember, I used 100% whole wheat flour. If you were to mix all-purpose flour with whole wheat flour or use white wheat flour, you would have even lighter bread. But this is absolutely perfect. I'm gonna slice it up here into little chunks. I love dipping this bread into my homemade spaghetti sauce. Oh my goodness, that is like one of my most favorite things to do. But it's delicious with butter, it's delicious with jam, it's delicious served with an olive oil bread dip, it's delicious served with white beans. My daughter and I love to just make a quick meal of like sauteed white beans with garlic and olive oil and then use this bread to scoop it up and a little bit of heaven. I'm gonna go in for a bite right now. I'm just gonna smear it with a little bit of butter. It's absolutely perfect. It's soft yet chewy with a crispy crust. It's not overpowering, it's not dense. It's perfection. You guys, this is the easiest bread recipe. You're gonna love it. I can't wait for you to make it. And if you're looking to dip it in spaghetti sauce, just like me, be sure to catch my next recipe where I walk you through how to make the most perfect Instant Pot spaghetti sauce. Until next time, happy cooking.